So the president of the World Bank Group, Haji Banga, and his counterpart at the African Development Bank Group, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, have shared their thoughts, policy focus, and actions on how to provide sustainable electricity for millions of Africans. Let's listen to both Adesina and Banga at this fireside chat hosted by the World Bank on Monday.
But very hard. The simplicity is that electricity is a basic human right. What we all take for granted, education, healthcare, safety, going up in an elevator, charging your smartphone, access to AI, which requires not just computing power, but also electricity. We take that for granted, but people in Africa cannot, because when you fly over Africa, the dark patches you see are not absence of people. They're people living the way their forefathers did. In the 21st century, that is a matter of some degree of shame for all of us. It has to change. What we're trying to do, Akin and I, is to put our combined shoulders at that effort. What we're trying to do is to create quality of life and livelihoods for African people. And in my mind, if you step back for a second, that will come from 3 or 4 or 5 things. And the first one is infrastructure. The second one is healthcare. The third one is work around agriculture as a business. The fourth one could be value-added manufacturing, including of critical minerals. The fifth one could be sustainable tourism. These are all great, but none of them work without electricity. So the foundation of all this is energy, and preferably done the right way with renewable energy. That's the logic of this thing. What we are trying to do is to get together with 15 countries to start with, but including more as we go along, to create energy compacts for each country, which really means an agreement on how we will go from here to there and what all needs to change and evolve as we go from here to there. And then we lead up to it with a summit in Tanzania, and the Prime Minister is here. They are the hosts of that summit and great partners for the two of us. And that summit is at the end of January, on the 27th and 28th of January. And we're going to try and sit each head of state down with people to discuss the changes that need to happen on utility reform, regulatory reform, inter-regional connection of grids, things that go from this conversation at 80,000 feet to the reality of day-to-day delivery. We know this works. It's not the first time. If you look at Rwanda, or you look at Mozambique, or you look at Tanzania itself, they've all made great strides. Rwanda has made enormous strides. Mozambique is making some. We've tested out this idea with Tanzania and other countries. It works. So we know it can work. The question is, what holds us back from delivering it in that case? And to my mind, it's all about people and trust. It is not that people have not wanted to do this in the past. They've talked about this earlier. Why does it not get done? Mostly because either people don't cooperate rightly, or they don't trust each other, or you start trying to find ways to create space for your organization and your name to get better noticed than the other. This is not about us and you. This is about all of us together. We're kind of in this game because without electricity in Africa, without jobs and livelihood in Africa, just think through the 1.2 billion people in the emerging markets coming through the pipe. A large number of those are in Africa. They will be eligible for a job in the coming 10 to 12 years. If we do not give them a job, we do not give them dignity. Poverty is a state of mind as much as it is a state of being. So we have to find a way to give them dignity. Jobs will not come without all these things, from infrastructure to healthcare to manufacturing. None of that happened without electricity. It's time to find a way to do it together. We're trying to do this, 250 million from us, 50 million from him. I don't care whether it's 100 from him and 300 from me or 200 from me. I just want to get the down 300 million into electricity in the next 7 years, and that's our focus.
Development is about dignity, right? And there's no dignity when you don't have electricity. You take a look at Africa today. You got 3 people, 16% of global population, 3% of the global electricity access. Only 6% of the global energy access. How do you do that? Just before we came in here, I was talking to 2 folks working for GIAB about should we make a case for why we should invest? Actually, we were just talking about that in energy. I say absolutely yes, because as Ajay said, Energy is all about how you actually grow economies. It's how you actually invest in industries. It's how you actually create jobs, right? So you cannot really grow global economy without energy. In any case, with Africa just being 2% of that, 3% of that, it means Africa's participation in the global economy will continue to be low. And Africa cannot be at the bottom of the global value chain. You cannot industrialize in the dark. You can't grow in the dark. You can't do that. And so this is fundamental to Africa's growth, development, competitiveness globally. Now, when it comes to the issue of what the numbers are, it's alarming. You know, we have today, the numbers we use to pan around is that it's 600 million people without access to electricity. I think those numbers are actually quite on the low end, because with COVID, rising inflation, with a lot of poverty, many more people that are actually using electricity are now using coal and other things. So that number has actually gone up quite significantly. So the issue that we must therefore say is, what must we do? We need a quantum leap. This is why I'm so excited with my partnership together with Ajay. Both of us met and we said, look, we're going to look really silly here. There's nothing new about getting electricity done. It's all about making sure we have scale, we have the resources, we have the partnership, we have the governments, and we then say, without electricity, it's nothing. Look, he was talking about the issue of migration. You know, you take a look at insects, okay? Insects, you turn off this light and and put on light. Where do the insects go? They know better, right? They go to where there's light. It's the same with migration. You know, people don't have electricity, they're going to move to where there is electricity and where there's better quality of life. And so your question is, why hasn't it happened? It hasn't happened because, for many reasons. First is that we have not prioritized energy in the national plannings for many countries, right? So that's the first thing. So the amount of budget devoted to energy is actually quite low. The second is the fact that a lot of the infrastructure are quite dilapidated, and we have not actually done it. Most of it is on energy generation. So, for example, you take the Inga, for example. Grand Inga, we've been talking about it forever. Now, that alone is about 70,000 megawatts. If you actually got it done, then, of course, we will have solved this problem. But the other part is, even if we have the power generation, Ajay, is how do you evacuate the power? I'm just coming in from from Angola, where they have 5.2 gigawatts of power. But they are stranded with 1.5 gigawatts. They can't evacuate it because of what? There's no transmission line. And so we have to, therefore, invest a lot in transmission line. Now, I remember also the importance of distribution line. I went to Kenya a couple of years ago, and we went to a particular project where we called Last Mile Connectivity Project. And there's a lady, as we were going in, her name was Grace, which happens to be the name of my wife, but she was not my wife. So we were walking, and somebody asked and said, and this is the point, I'm just trying to use it to reinforce the point that Ajay made. He said, do you know Dr. Adesina? She said, no. Do you know African Development Bank? She said, no. All I know was that we never used to have electricity, and now we do. And that's what we are talking about here, is putting together an alliance, not of flags, not of institutions. You know, all of you around here are equally as important as Ajay and I. So both in terms of governments, in terms of multilateral development, bilateral agencies, and also philanthropic agencies and all of that. Now, two more things about why this has not happened. It's just capital. Just capital. I mean, raising capital in Africa is several times more expensive than any other part of the world. And so if you look globally, we have in private, you're doing your private sector lab. You know, in Africa, Africa is about 5% of total private investments going into energy. And so we have to make sure that we have more concessional financing. We have to make sure we bring that weighted cost of capital down. We have to make sure also, and the governments are here, and part of the big reason why the private sector aren't going in there is just because the policy and the regulatory environment, tariff structure, don't make sense for investors to do that. So it's a whole range of things. But one thing I would say is this, that the power of our collective is going to solve this problem. You know, if you mentioned the New Deal on energy in your question, when we were saying, when we launch a New Deal, progress is being made, by the way. That New Deal was launched in 2016. What happened? The percentage of Africans that have access to electricity increased from 37% to 52%, right? So a lot. We connected, a collective we, 92 million households. Now we've got to connect 114 million more households. That's about 448 million people. So what we are talking about here will do 300 million. That's about almost 60, 64, 65% of that. And that's why we need to work together. We are determined to do that. And I can't think of better partners than him, of course, all of you that are here.